Well, hello there, everybody. I was writing some stuff down as I try to wrap my mind around what we're going to be talking about over the next, an hour and a half to 2 hours. So drop a comment, say hello, say what's going on. New thumbnail images are out. I'm changing my thumbnails a little bit. Sorry for looking so grim and angry in the thumbnails, but you know how it is when it comes to thumbnails on the YouTube, on the interwebs. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm way more energetic because it's almost 5 p.m. here on the West Coast of the United States. So we will jump into this. I have a lot to say about this, and I don't even know where to begin to say the stuff that I want to say. But I want to say some stuff. And I'll sort of share with you throughout the video where this came from and why I'm thinking in this direction and why I've been thinking in this direction, especially since I came up with this gem of a line, 3-4 weeks ago. Sometimes it's just better to shut your mouth. Sometimes it's just better to shut your mouth. I think that's just generally true. But Amber, how you doing? Amber says, good afternoon, Arthur. I hope you and your family are doing well. We are A-okay. My kids and my wife are about to go miniature golfing. And then in a couple of hours, I got a meeting with my discipleship guys that I haven't met with for a couple of weeks. So excited for that. Excited to reconnecting with them. Working on some intertextuality work on Hosea and Romans 9. Come on now. That's, we got some real scholarship on this channel as opposed to other channels. So we got level-headed folks on this channel is what I'd like to tell people. It's partly why I want to frame the following conversation in the way I want to frame it, by the way, because I trust my audience and I really like my audience. And I want to grow my audience the way the audience is set up right now. And so this is partly why you will see me be hesitant towards leaning into certain conversations that I know are viral, that I know are important, that I know could get the views and the clicks and all that stuff. But I want to be fair in regards to what I know, what I think I know, what I think I know, and then where I might potentially be wrong about what I think I know versus what other people know. So I spend a lot of time researching and then just not commenting on a subject, because as I research the subject, I realize that I am way in over my head when it comes to the actual matter. And then I'll see people just like posting stuff on the internet, and then I'll watch some of them and I'll be like, oh man, like, what you're talking about. You guys are talking past each other. Nobody really wants to learn anything here. So those are the sorts of areas we're going into. So Connor says, you can pretend that I'm level-headed if you'd like. Well, I don't know what to say. Oh, man.
This is a sickness of the highest order.
Oh, if you're not right now, at least maybe I can be an influence on you, Connor, to grow into that direction, to grow into a direction where you become a more level-headed individual than you are now. And I think if we do that, then I've done my job. So, I mean, it's great that you might not think you are currently, but maybe you might be in the future. I don't know. So, yeah. So again, guys, what's going on? My name is Arthur. For those of you guys who don't know, I've titled the stream YouTube Discussions Show Me. Sometimes we need to shut up, and I don't know why there's a little colon there. That's weird. YouTube Discussions Show Me. Sometimes we need to shut up. Yelling. I'm yelling this. I am the voice of reason. I am wisdom that stands on the street corner, though wisdom is portrayed as a woman in the book of Proverbs. But Virtually, here I am standing on the street corners of YouTube and yelling out to people and saying, "Oh, you foolish people, come listen to me and gain some wisdom." If you'd like your biblical references, there they are, man. That's essentially what I'm trying to do. That to everybody, whoever listens, and not many people listen to me, but those who do, you know what I'm talking about. What's going on? How you doing? You have a great camera setup. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It is a Canon M50. It's got a pretty decent lens on it, thanks to one of my buddies who's been letting me use it perpetually, which is so awesome of him. And worked hard at having the current setup, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much. We got a pretty seriously professional setup on this channel and in this ministry. Though our audience doesn't reflect it, we still want to produce things to a pristine quality for our audience. On the topic at hand, doesn't trying to explain and discuss these topics we don't fully understand help us get through it? Yes. It does, but that's not what I'm talking about. So I'm not necessarily talking about the discussions we're having. Maybe my issue is more with content creators who don't know what they're talking about, right? Who sometimes it's just better to shut your mouth. Who kind of are perpetually pushing some of these conversations, and maybe to a certain extent there's a conversation of humility. There's a number of humilities I want to talk about within here. So one of them is just like plain humility, just being a humble individual. Because as Christians, and at this point I'm using Christian in a very, very broad sense, meaning Protestants, Orthodox, Catholics, Oriental Orthodox, we ought to be, if we're actually in a relationship with Jesus, humility ought to be the sort of thing that is being developed in our lives as we relate to God and as the Holy Spirit works in our lives. Humility ought to be the natural progression of a Christian's life, meaning the older, ideally speaking, the older the Christian individual gets, the more humble the Christian individual gets, because they've been walking with the Lord longer. So humility definitely is a part of it. The other thing is humility as well, but it's a different kind of humility. This is what we call epistemic humility, right? And this would have to do with the amount of information and justifications we have for the sort of things that we believe in, and then having humility in those things and not maybe stepping across our boundaries in regards to making claims. I believe this, I don't believe this, taking hard stances, trying to defend positions or be against positions that we don't really understand. Okay? So those are the sorts of things that we want to talk about today. So yeah, it's fine to discuss these subjects, no question about it. But it's a bit different when you try to debate a subject that you don't really understand. I hope that clarifies something for you. Matt, what's going on, brother? How you doing? This is a topic that I'm really interested in. There's a lot of content I don't make because I'm not sure I understand it enough or am qualified enough to speak on it. Yes. Yeah. Amen. Now, why did I want to talk about this today? Well, this came out of the conversation I was introduced to yesterday. I didn't know that there was a conversation happening online about this whole between Orthodox, J Dyer predominantly, it seems like, talking about Catholics say that they worship the same God, or Muslims worship the same God as Catholics do, and then the conversations kind of spreading from there. I got introduced to this yesterday on the stream live. You guys saw me learning about this. Big props to JP for jumping on and clarifying some things for me and giving me some resources to think about and think through. And there's a number of things I said in the conversation with JP, and JP appreciated this, that were thoughts I had in the moment understanding philosophical dialogue on these subjects. Now, I've been texting back and forth to JP and talking about it, just as friends, just talking about it. But immediately, I was like, wait, there needs to be I got to understand what's going on here, because people don't just randomly put things without any justification for them, especially highly intelligent individuals. So I noticed and saw that Capturing Christianity had William on, Albright, I think that's his last name, right? William was on, and he was on with Dr. Trent Doherty. Now, I've known Trent Doherty, we've connected. Let me just put it that way. We've connected. I've tried to have him on the channel a bunch of times, and it's never really worked out. And Dr. Trent Doherty is he's not a novice. He's a Catholic guy. He's a philosopher. He knows his stuff very well. So I watched that dialogue, and he was defending the Catholic position, and he was giving the arguments for it and all that stuff. And I was like, okay, I got to do some more thinking about this, because if somebody like Trent is like, this is obviously the case, like, what's wrong with you guys? Essentially telling people generally that are against that position that they don't understand the conversation. It's so obviously the case. Now, as I was thinking about it, I was like, wait, man, this goes into metaphysics. It goes into epistemology. It definitely goes into the philosophy of language. So I started digging up some books. And I've been doing that since last night. Okay? I have been doing this since last night. So, for example, these are books that I had to read when I was getting my MA in philosophy. Saul Kripke's Naming and Necessity. Now, this is a book that deals with these kinds of subjects. Whether essentially whether names are set, let me put it that way, right? Like terms we use are set in all possible worlds, and because they're set, we're talking about the same thing, right? The referent being the same thing, regardless of the qualifications we give. They could be true or false qualifications, but the thing we're talking about the same. Now, again, I haven't exhaustively looked back into these things, and I'm trying to do that so I can be well informed on this matter. And again, I'm not doing this post right now, or I'm not doing this live to talk about this. I just want you guys to know why we're talking about, hey, sometimes we just need to shut up. These are books I've just pulled out and want to look. Universals by Dr. J.P. Moreland. Okay. These are pretty high-level academic books, guys. Metaphysics, Key Concepts. And I have some articles about epistemic humility in regards to religious claims and all that stuff. Because I want to be informed. I want to be well informed. Now, all that stuff is happening, and it's happening last night. I'm like sitting on the ground here in my office. I'm trying to find articles that I've read, remember books that would contain information that would be helpful in this discussion, because I want to understand what people are saying, and for my good, and also for the good of my audience. Whenever I want to talk about these things, I want the conversations to be helpful and edifying and good, right? So I wake up in the morning and I see that and this was put 9 hours ago. So today, when I woke up, I was searching. I opened up Instagram. I was looking at it, and Dr. Peter Bohosian, who is an atheist, had put out a video that I thought, wow, this is exactly what I'm thinking about in a different context. Okay, and so I'm going to play that video soon. But before I do that, let me jump into some of your questions and comments, and we'll go. So I watched, Nick did a video yesterday, and I didn't watch all of it, Nick. I was in there for just very few minutes, but I had some stuff to do, so I couldn't watch. He says, I did the same thing. When I saw Cameron's stream and the claims Doherty made, I dug up philosophy of language books and saw that what he was saying was not controversial with regards to references. Correct. Now, again, I haven't done specific studies into the philosophy of language, but I know enough about the philosophy of language and kind of what Trent was saying that I was like, okay, I know which book I got to go to. And the book I knew I had to go to was Naming and Necessity by Saul Kripke. This is a revolutionary work, you guys. You don't understand. This is a revolutionary work. And so, for example, this generally his idea. I'm gonna throw this. You guys can look this up, but I'm gonna read this little line on page 2. The issues explained further in the book mostly related to modality and rigid designations, or the rigid designation. Now, rigid designation is this concept I was talking about that essentially names are set in all possible worlds, and everybody referring to the thing, whether right or wrong or true or false, is still referring to that thing. Revolutionary work. It's not an easy read. It's not an easy read for me. I struggled through this when I took metaphysics. Metaphysics was probably the hardest class I took, and I took metaphysics with Dr. J.P. Moreland. I mean, it was so difficult where doing work on this book and another book, I had anxiety attacks and panic attacks. Now I'm remembering them. So I legitimately had like a mental breakdown when I was working on this subject. I haven't had that happen at any other point with any other issue. So again, so Nick's confirming everything I'm saying and everything I've been thinking about over the last 2 days. He says, yep, Kripke is cited in nearly everything I looked at because it's important to understand these things. And here's my issue. I just want to understand the other side correctly. Look, if Catholics are right about this, then Catholics are right about this. Now, I think they're both right and wrong because I think part of it has to do with the theology and the philosophy of it. And then some of it has to do with the way we generally communicate, like common communication. And I think there's legitimate, as I'm obviously formulating my thoughts, rigid designation sounds very Platonic, to be honest. Well, yeah, universals are Platonic concepts. So good job, Connor. You're on the right track there. You're thinking properly. So check this out. So here's a question. Okay, Amber says, how do you think that different prepositional and theological framework confuse the conversations between traditions and are those impossible barriers to productive interactions? I don't think they're impossible barriers. This is why it requires humility. The problem I see with the YouTube kind of culture, and I'm just talking amongst Christians here because that's my tribe, and I want to be helpful in that conversation with Christians. Okay, it is that we talk about the things that we don't understand, and we could still have the conversations if we have humility, and specifically epistemic humility, saying, hey, I think I have some justifications for this, but the justifications aren't, the best or something like that, or prove me wrong or something like that. We get into these weird defensive modes that I don't think are helpful. And that's what everybody's trying to do. So, no, I'm not doing a call-in. So, hey guys, hit the like button. A bunch of you guys just jumped on. We're going to be talking about why I think that a bunch of us on the internet who make content specifically need to shut our mouths. Sometimes it's just better to shut your mouth because we don't know what we're talking about. Okay, so this is coming from an epistemologist. The following video is coming from an epistemologist, Dr. Peter Boghosian. And the context has to do with the war in Iran. Now, let's look at what Dr. Boghosian is saying. And I think what he's saying is absolutely right on. I think he has really, really good evidence for the claims he's making. Okay, so let's check this out.
The United States and Israel recently decided to bomb Iran. Of course, this being social media in 2025, everybody is now an expert on Israel, Iran, bombing, the Third World War, and everything else that has to do with the conflict. So, can you trust your moral intuitions? Can you trust your practical intuitions? How do you know what to think or if you should be entitled to an opinion at all? So, let's take a look at this blank map of Iran and the countries surrounding Iran. If you cannot name 3 countries that surround Iran, you need to be more skeptical about your confidence in your belief about whether or not the United States or Israel was in the right or in the wrong. Now, just because you can...
Okay, so important point here, and we'll continue with that. He shows a map of Iran and says, if you cannot mention 3 countries that border Iran, you are not in a position to make a comment about the conversation about Israel, Iran, and all of that. Now, I'm taking this idea and applying it within Christian dialogue on the internet. If we are having conversations about a specific theological point and we can't get into the details of that, we don't even know where to start. We don't know what kind of evidence or logic is being applied to that conversation specifically. For example, we're learning in the moment. Someone introduces us to a subject. Like I was introduced to the subject yesterday. I was looking through it. Now, because of my background, I have a way to process that information and say, oh, maybe they're saying this, maybe they're saying that, and then go through it without having to formulate an opinion necessarily, but know where the conversation is going and even try to steelman the opposing position to me or something like that. Now here, because he's dealing with war and geography and stuff like that, he's saying, look, you got to be able to know where Iran's on the planet. If you don't even know that minimally, where it is and who neighbors it, probably might not want to have an opinion on the matter. Have some humility.
Name, for example, 3 countries, or you could find Israel on a map and really look at that map and ask yourself if you can do that. This is a time for self-honesty. If you cannot do that, and yet you had a strong opinion about the matter, you should really have a come to Jesus moment and ask yourself whether or not your opinion was warranted. So that does not mean if someone is not particularly good at geography that they're not, again, it's not about entitled to have an opinion, it's whether or not your opinion is justified. One can also be particularly good at geography and not know anything about geopolitics. At the start of the Iraq War, I was teaching at Loyola.
So let me break this down. So one can particularly be good at memorizing Bible verses. If I were to take his, the geography context. So you could be good at geography, but not geopolitics, and you're in a problem. So I would say maybe you read the Bible a lot and you know a lot of Bible verses. You've memorized them, but you're not particularly good at theology and specifically systematic theology or the philosophy that goes into doing theology. And then you're leaning into theological conversations. It would make sense to just not and put yourself in a position where you are just learning. Look at this example he gives about the Iraq War.
In New Orleans, I asked people how confident they were that the United States should be attacking Iraq. People said they were very confident the war was the right thing to do. I then had all my students clean off their desks and write down in a list on a blank sheet of paper the names of the countries that surrounded Iraq. 2 people in the whole class could name 3 countries that surrounded Iraq. 2 out of a class of, say, 35. That should make people suspicious of the confidence they have in their political pronouncements. There's no difference between the geography of knowing what countries surround Iraq and what countries surround Iran. These are both geographical questions from which one can make inferences about one's knowledge of the region. I hope this has helped you to become more skeptical about your beliefs and your pronouncements about justification of a war in Iran, in the Middle East, with Israel, with the United States. Again, it's a complicated issue. And the key to any complicated issue is not only to be humble about the claims at stake, but also to ask yourself what you really know. Fortunately, in this case, we can test very easily what you really know. And finally, if your beliefs were out of alignment, were mismatched with your knowledge of the area, that should cause you to be skeptical about other beliefs you have in that you've extended the confidence beyond the warrant of the evidence. So, there you have it. Thank you.
So, excellent wisdom. Again, Dr. Peter Boghossian's an atheist. Now, I like him quite a bit. I really, really like him. I think there's a lot of stuff he says that is good that we should listen to and learn from. So how do we apply this to the conversation about theology, specifically, in my opinion, at least, when it pertains to philosophical discourse, because there's quite a bit of that. Have humility. Don't come to conclusions too quickly. And there's a wisdom in here in this sense. If you come to a conclusion too quickly, and then some things come to light that you were just unfamiliar with, you didn't know, and then now you have to publicly renounce your earlier position you took, you're going to look foolish. What's going to end up happening is maybe people might be generous to you the first time, and they might be more generous to you or less generous to you the second time and the third time. And by the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh time, they might say, maybe this guy doesn't really know what he's talking about because he keeps taking on or she keeps taking on these positions without actually knowing these conversations and misleading people X, Y, and Z. So very simply put, my recommendation to my friends out there is this. If there is a theological conversation that you're going to lean into, and when I say lean into, I mean you're going to get into, you're going to have a conversation about, you're going to take a position on, you're going to try to defend, or you're going to try to attack other people who hold that position or don't hold that position, whatever it may be, it makes sense to actually do the work diligently, and the work is not always easy. You're not going to come across, some of these subjects are so difficult where you're going to need months of thinking and studying about it. You're going to have to read articles and books about it. It's going to be even harder if you've never ever dealt with the subject. Now, if you have a background in the subject, it might be a bit easier. For, again, not to toot my own horn here, but when I'm looking at the subject and I know some of the thinking that goes behind it, say the philosophy of language, then I know what books to go to and draw upon in order for me to get into it and have a more well-rounded opinion on the subject or something like that, or at least know where to start, as opposed to people who have no knowledge about it, but think they have an opinion about it because, I don't know, they read the Bible. You can read the Bible and not know how to have conversations about theology because you haven't developed those skills. For the same reason, I might know a bunch of rules about basketball, but if I've never played basketball, I might not think that I'm Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or something like that. But I know the rules. It doesn't translate. So just my kind of edification to this conversation on YouTube specifically, or any conversation that deals with theology and philosophy, is be informed, have humility, specifically have epistemic humility, meaning know what you know and what you don't know and what you are learning. And then don't take stances. It's okay to say, wow, that's a really good question. I've never thought about it. Here's my preliminary thinking on it, but maybe I'm missing something here. And I might need some help to further understand this conversation. That is godly behavior, you guys. That is absolutely godly behavior to say, I don't know. That is righteous behavior. That is wise behavior. The Bible speaks about wisdom of this sort everywhere, right? Specifically in the wisdom literature. Read the book of Proverbs. Develop humility and apply it in your discourse on the internet, whether you're a content creator, whether you're just a person in the comment section. Please do that. I think it would be beneficial to the church at large. It will be good for people generally. And I think generally unbelievers will see this about us and say, wow, these people are actually humble, and that's a character trait that would generally be emulated, and people will want to emulate that kind of character rather than seeing us talk about nonsense. Okay, so just think about that a little bit. I think it'll be helpful. Just jump into some of the stuff you guys are saying. Tell me what you guys think about this. Am I doing a call-in? No, I'm not doing a call-in right now. I was going to, but then I decided not to. Hey, fam, I like your mic, not Mac. I like your mic logo, Arthur. Thank you, Thank you. This mic logo looks almost as wise as the actual Arthur. The question is whether the mic logo or the logo in general is an actual reference to the person Arthur. Oh, come on now. Exactly. There's so many areas of theology that I do not address because I'm not well versed in that particular topic and discipline. Had to tell me about it, right? what I know can start to fill, what is that? What I know can start to fill a thimble. I don't know what thimble means. What I do not know can overflow the ocean. Yeah. Wise words, brother. Thank you, Jose. Appreciate that. Humility makes sense. Well, yeah, I hope so. People generally don't hold definitives deep down that they then reverse. Or at least I don't most of the time. They have the questions in their heart and pretend they don't. Well, that might be true, yeah. Yeah, well, one of the things I would say is one of the ways I've seen people walk away from the faith is actually by holding to some positions like this. So, for example, somebody might hold to a specific view that would be secondary in Christian dialogue. Okay. And then they come across to find out or change their mind. They find out it's wrong, or they change their mind. They think it's wrong now. And somehow then they want to leave Christianity because of this one thing, because they had built their kind of faith and the foundation on this view. So if this view is false, everything else was false. So they didn't properly develop the ideology here in regards to, no, this is a secondary issue. It could be false. There's 3 opinions on it, right? Like, let's just say, and you're just holding to one of them. But they were taught that it's only one way. There's a lot of people I come across and I have conversations with that have deconstructed. And when I get into having actual personal conversations with them, one of the reasons and this is not everyone, but I find out that they have deconstructed because they had falsely built their Christian faith on an idea or a view that is not essential to Christianity. And they put too much into that view, whatever the view may be. And then it becomes a humongous issue. I think for me, it's very interesting why people feel uncomfortable with not having an opinion on something. Maybe it's social pressure. I think it's that every single one of us, and again, I'm generally speaking here, not an expert on this stuff, on sociology, but I do think, and I pay attention to these things, I do think that part of the problem is that every single one of us has a platform. Most people I talk to have some kind of a platform to share their opinions and thoughts on the subject. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, YouTube. Not everybody has a YouTube channel, right? But a lot of people have Instagram accounts or Facebook accounts, and then they project and they share their views to their friends. And so for some reason, they feel like they need to have an opinion on the subject. Now, this is even more so when it comes to content creators. Now, some of you guys don't create content, but I'll tell you what the difficulty and the pressures of creating content is. And there's a couple of them, a couple of different ways. One is, oh man, I'm going to go stream and somebody's going to ask me about this. I better have an answer on it. No, it's okay not to have an answer on it. Depending on what, whatever it is that you're doing. Like, you guys, I've spent the last almost week, watching so many interviews. Like, my YouTube algorithm's all jacked up right now because when I turn on my YouTube, it's a bunch of interviews with the Shah of Iran or Ayatollah Khomeini. Like, that's it. From like the 60s and the 70s. I told you guys this yesterday, but I talked to my wife and I said, man, I've watched way too many interviews with Khomeini. And she said, of course you have. Partly because like I want to know, I want to be in the know. I'm also a history geek, so I enjoy that stuff. I've heard so many stories about Khomeini from my parents where I was like, I can't believe I've never actually gone and researched and looked at interviews from this guy to know what he was saying and what his thoughts were and all this stuff. So that's what I've been doing. Because I know people are going to ask me about it. I also want to have an opinion. If I can have an opinion, I want to have an opinion. So you got to do some research. So there's a pressure. And then also, that's a good side of it, right? Like wanting to do research because people might ask and you want to have a response. The negative side of it is I got to get something out really quick because this thing is trending. And I need to get on top of it because it's going to bring in views. It's going to bring, subscribers and all that stuff. And so people jump on that. That's the negative pressure that comes, I think, when it comes to being a content creator on the internet. And that's problematic. And you got to fight against that regularly. You just have to. There are some things I think you can definitely make videos about and not know every single detail to it and be able to get something out really quickly. But there are other things that are way too sensitive. And you have to have the proper character and humility. Again, I'll go back to humility. You got to have the right character and humility to say, I'm not going to comment on this because I don't know much about it. And it's okay. It's okay for you not to comment on a matter. It's really, really fine. Okay. Just, again, I'm going to go back to sometimes it's just better to shut your mouth. That's biblical. Knowing when to shut up is biblical. I can't stress this enough. We are in the business of creating people who reflect the person of Jesus. That's what the Christian life ought to be about. Not how many views we get on the internet. Not how many people like whatever. Simple. The logo is just as referential as the name or the description. Yeah, correct. That's a good one. Nick's getting it, man. Nick's got it. He's been reading philosophy of language stuff, so he's on it. Oh, man. A thimble is a metal cup-shaped object used to protect. Oh, I know what a thimble is. It's the thing in Monopoly. So dumb. I know what a thimble is. Oh, gosh. The Monopoly thing, yes. Growing up, my mom had so many of those things. Because we couldn't throw things away, you guys, right? Like, it's like, oh, I ripped my pants. Well, you got to sew it up. Do you remember, Arthur, when we had a conversation and there was you, another Christian, me, and another atheist? We kind of covered this topic a little bit. Connor, I don't remember that, but I'm not surprised that we would cover this because this is also a subject that's not just an intellectual thing, right? Like, so we have virtues and then we have intellectual virtues. And I think those things come into a conversation specifically for me as a Christian. They come into the conversation of spiritual formation and growing and maturing as a Christian individual. That to me is an extremely important thing in my life, spiritual formation. YouTube growth and popularity is something we strive towards, but it is not what makes me more like Jesus. So in comparison, it's like that, right? Becoming more like Jesus up here, the YouTube stuff is non-existent. So I'm not surprised at all that we would have a conversation like that. So, and he says, I said, I don't think any amount of evidence could convince me because and I think mostly atheists, could never say there's this definitive that makes me think your God is not real, which again is fine. This is partly why I tend to believe in more of a cumulative case argument for the existence of Christianity, the existence of God and the truth of Christianity, rather than here's a knockdown proof or a knockdown argument that'll lose. I spoke this the other day about a video that Sean McDowell had put out, interviewing asking a bunch of Christians what they thought the best argument was. Let's go to Noah's comments. Noah. I think for me, it's very interesting why people feel uncomfortable with not having an opinion. Okay, at the very least, you can openly admit to having a very uninformed view, correct, on a subject and be open to being wrong and learning more about it. There should be a direct relationship in your confidence, correct. So this is what Peter Boghossian was talking about when he said you're kind of overstepping your boundaries, essentially. You're overconfident on a matter that you shouldn't be that confident about because of the information that you have, right, in the palm of your hands. Yeah, this is a good point. There's a lot of pressure to be an expert, so I better know that answer. Yep, exactly. Yeah, again, I gave this example yesterday when we were at we drove through Sacramento with a group of guys, and in the state capitol, there was a protest happening. This was the No King Day protest happening. And there was a person who had a flag of Ukraine on his board, and the flag of Ukraine was upside down. And this person was supposedly pro-Ukraine and didn't even know what the flag of Ukraine looks like. And we get people jumping into the streets and protesting. And the reason why they're doing it is because their friend, like it has nothing to do with the truth. Whatever it may be, and I don't care about the conservative liberal kind of conversation here. It doesn't matter to me. You jump into the streets, you start protesting. Why are you protesting? Oh, because my friend is there. Or my friend belongs to this group and asked me to go. Do you really want to be there for that? And we see this stuff, right? These are the sort of things that go viral on the internet. Well, somebody will go and interview one of these guys. It goes, why do you think the following thing? And then they have no answer. They have zero answer, and they just start talking nonsense. About a subject, so yeah, this is with the previous comments. So direct relationship with your confidence about a subject, with your knowledge of it, a generally positive one, at least, in my humble opinion. Yep. That's one reason I don't make as much content as I probably could. Amen. Yeah. I'm with you on this, Amber. I really am. Mine is also not tied to current events, so I don't have as much pressure. Yeah, but still, like, one of the things that ends up happening is with the sort of stuff you're studying, there's more kind of things that come in, and specifically with the stuff you're studying. There could be linguistic sort of arguments back and forth, and it becomes, it really, really becomes crazy. He said, as I learn more, my confidence actually goes down. Well, look, this is, what is it? So didn't Socrates, this is one of the things attributed to Socrates, in regards to the more I know, the more I learn, or the more I know, come to realize that the less I know, right? The kind of this idea of, the more you find out about information, the more you realize you don't know as much as you thought you did. And that's fine. That really is. Especially, you guys, I think this is something that's probably leading like on a psychological kind of thing. Here's an idea. Part of the reason why we have so many individuals in our society that tend to have anxiety attacks, tend to have depression and things of that sort, is because we have so much access to information. And then people have the access to the information but don't have the information. It leads to anxiety. Because they feel inadequate, and that bugs them. I think that's one of the reasons. You gotta, and then you always have information coming your way. You always look. Last week I barely saw anything on the internet, which was great. You guys should all detox from social media stuff. Everybody should do a social media detox at one point or another. Whether that's a 1-day thing, 2-day thing, week-long thing, just stop it. Go, today I'm not going to turn on YouTube. Today I'm not going to turn Instagram on, or whatever, Facebook, whatever, TikTok or whatever like that. Put your phone away. Go on a walk. Go on a retreat. don't access it. Just detox from it for a couple of days. It's good for you. This is also called fasting. It's good to fast. So we get overwhelmed by the amount of information that comes into our lives. And we do need an information detox. Absolutely, we know that. All I know is I know nothing. There you go, Socrates. Noah says, but honestly, even with the Dunning-Kruger effect, I feel like what's happening now is less about ignorance and more about a lack of willingness to thoroughly understand the subject. That's probably true. I want to be a little careful there, no, because then we're attacking an individual's character, and we got to know someone to make that comment about them. Where like they don't have the desire to learn the information. It could be they don't know there is information to learn, right? Like it could be genuine ignorance. Like they might think the conversation's super simple, whatever the conversation might be about. And then they realize, wow, this is a lot more complicated than it is. Again, I finished my stream yesterday, whenever that was. What did I do yesterday? I don't even know, man. So I finished my stream yesterday, and I went and did a couple of things, and I came back to my office, and then I sat down and I watched, amongst other things, the conversation that Cameron Bartuzzi had with Trent Doherty and William Albright. And again, I'm not getting into, like for me, the theological conversation on this is secondary. Okay? This is very important. I hope people understand what I'm trying to say here. When it comes to like the Catholics said this and the Orthodox say this and the Protestants are saying this, that's a secondary conversation, because if the philosophy is correct and there's no contradictions in it, then it's fine, whatever they're saying. So, and I want to know about the philosophy, right? So, William made a bunch of points, fine. For me, it's neither here nor there. But listening to Trent, and going, oh yeah, I know what he's talking about. I know what books I got to grab off my shelf. Got to lick into this. Waking up in the morning, opening books. Like I texted JP a picture of the books I had out and stuff like that, and the articles. And I was like, look what you did to me. Like I was okay. I was fine yesterday, bro. You had to drop this on me. We all need to detox from Arthur sometimes. Amen. Too much nuance is unhealthy. Amen. Yeah. Yeah, too much nuance is unhealthy. But I don't like too much nuance. I think people nuance things way too much. But important subjects that require it, it's got to be done. Okay. So I agree, over nuancing could be bad. I have a love-hate for YouTube apologetics. You and I, we're not the only ones, J. Rich. I hate the disrespect if you don't agree. I love the info I get that I haven't had any knowledge about. Yeah, amen to that. Yeah, I don't watch much YouTube apologetic stuff. In times I've been wrong and had to reverse, there are a few things that could have caused it. One, actually, I was arguing about tribal affiliations, not truth. Okay. Two, found a subject that forces me to permanently oscillate between two extremes. That might be true. What's up, Narek? How you doing, brother? Definitely you guys need to detox from Arthur. I actually have Braxton Hunter coming next week to talk about how our theological and philosophical web affects views, and we are not always aware they are interconnected. That's a cool conversation. Looking forward to that. I will check that out. Hey, folks, if you're jumping on just right now, hit the like button. We'd really appreciate it. We are talking about how sometimes we, and specifically when I say we, I mean content creators, need to. Sometimes it's just better to shut your mouth on various subjects, specifically subjects that we are not in the know or we need to grow in or learn about, and then develop the ideas later on. What is your opinion about this? What is your opinion about this? Now, here's what I'll do. I'll drop, we'll take some calls. We'll take some calls. How much time do I have? Okay, I got time. We'll take some calls. I'm going to drop a link. If you guys want to call in, feel free to do that. I'm going to pin it. Let's keep the conversation on this subject. And if you disagree with me, feel free to call in and disagree with what I'm saying. And we can have a fruitful discussion, hopefully. I think I got the hiccups. We good? Are we good, chat? Chat, what's up, chat? We good, chat? Whew, I gotta breathe. I'm gonna chop the whole thing with Peter Bolosian out and try to create that, turn that into a video. I'm not sure I would have anything intelligent to say on this, or I would. Now nobody's want to call in because
I didn't want to hurt him, but he made me.
Oh man, I realize the weird irony in this, right? I realize the weird irony. It's like, hey, let's talk about the subject if you want. And we just spend the past, hour talking about how we probably should not be over confident about things. So here's where the balance is. Let me help us understand where the balance is. We can have opinions, obviously, but we don't have to be overconfident about our opinions. We can say, well, yeah, I lean this way and I have an opinion on it because of these justifications or something like that. I thought the conversation yesterday I had with JP was really helpful to this, because I brought up a number of points and JP kept saying, well, Art, you've made good points, and then he gave his kind of response multiple times to sort of say the same thing. And again, I agree with what he's saying, and I sort of understand where he's coming from on the subject. Largely in agreement with him, and maybe some of this requires cool heads to sit down and say, do I understand you actually? Without talking past each other. Oh, listening is a virtue. Oh, you know what listening requires, you guys? You with me? Are you guys here? Chat. Bunch of people left. You guys with me? Do you guys know what does listening require? Other than ears and the ability to hear. But what does listening require? Yeah, I think having more conversations on how to have conversations is definitely a positive thing. I agree. What does listening require? You guys know? I know what listening requires. Sometimes it's just better to shut your mouth. That's what it requires. Listening requires a shut mouth. Patience. Yeah. Listening definitely requires patience. Absolutely. But it is such a virtuous thing to sit there and say, I'm not going to speak and I'm going to let you argue your point. And I know we've all been there. I've been there where, you're overly enthusiastic and you want to prove the other person wrong and all that stuff. Where you kind of rush into the conversation. There's no need to do that. There's no need to do that. Oh, this is going to be good. Oh, this is going to be good. Hang on. guest. Waiting to see if we're gonna see you, or you're just gonna have your finger on the. Give me a second. Here we are. Yes, sir. We're looking at a floor, the ground.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, sir. Oh, you just turned it off. He's like, can you hear me? And then just turned off. Call back. Patience. Listening requires humility. Yes, patience and humility. Understanding. Yes. Understanding doesn't just randomly happen. You got to work at it. Yes, good sir.
There you go. You hear me?
I'm about to destroy this Orthodox guy right here.
What's going on, man?
You were speaking about this a little bit yesterday, and it seems like you and I were on the same, frame of thought of like, man, let me learn some more here.
Yeah, dude. You know what happened? For me, this isn't a new conversation for me. And up until Cameron's live stream, I would have been firmly in place of saying that no, of course, Christians and Jews and Muslims do not worship the same God. And I'm still comfortable saying that about worship. But when Doherty made his case for reference, I said, let me think about that. And then I have a whole file of books on the philosophy of language, a whole folder of them. So I started digging through them. And I'm like, he's not saying anything controversial. Everything he's saying is being affirmed again and again and again in these books. So now the question is, do I have a good reason to deny it?
Yeah,
and if
so
I don't.
that's so good.
Go ahead.
Because, look, I still can say, I'm confident saying that they don't worship the same God. There needs to be a qualifier there. There has to be.
Yep.
Because worship is, you can say that they aim to worship, or they affirm to worship, something like that. There needs to be a qualifier, because I think this is what I was talking about earlier when it comes to kind of the normal conversations we have as human beings and the words we use on a daily basis versus things that could be used more academically. So when you make a comment like, Muslims worship the same God as us, what your average individual hears you say is, there's nothing wrong with Islam. And that's not true, and nobody's affirming that, right? When you get into these conversations, and William and Trent yesterday said this multiple times, that they're in error, they're in big error, the Quran is full of lies and all this stuff. And I think it's important for us to make those qualifiers. But there's a secondary issue, Nick, I don't know if you thought about this, that I've been thinking about, specifically when it comes to Christians that are doing anti-Islamic apologetics. It's becoming a problem for them. Okay? And we know these guys, so I'll just name them, right? I don't have a problem with any of these guys, and I'll name them just fine. I don't know whether David Woods made these statements, but maybe he has. Avery might have. Sam, I'm pretty sure he has. When there's comments, when they're talking to Muslims, and they'll say things like, you worship Satan, or your God X. These sorts of statements becomes problematic if the individuals are affirming this other thing that, hey, we worship the same God in a very general sense as the creator, deity, and so on and so forth. And it could lead to quite a bit of misunderstanding among people. And maybe one of the things that we need to do as Christians who do this sort of stuff online is dial back some of our language and be generous and gracious in the way we speak to people, and not make statements that could seriously be problematic.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. But I just want to hop on and say, for me, the same way with you when you're saying the theological thing, that's secondary. Same for me. What interested me was this idea of reference. And what harm is there in admitting that they are referring to the same God? Even if we acknowledge almost everything they believe about him is incorrect, that doesn't mean they don't have the same referent in mind when they're talking about him. And we could acknowledge their worship is not true worship. They still need to hear the gospel. They still need to be saved. They still need to believe in Jesus. We can acknowledge all of these things. And Trent kept saying nothing bad follows from admitting that they're referring to the same thing. And I was really thinking about that. And I'm like, what bad does follow from admitting the same referent? And I can't really think of anything.
Yeah, I guess the fear in people, I think generally the fear in people is thinking that we're saying they're in the right, they're okay. They are somehow legitimately worshiping God. Yeah, but that's the fear. Yeah. That's essentially what it's going to come down to. And that comment was made a lot of times, I think, during that stream.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for me, it's the philosophy is a more foundational conversation than the theology at this point. Mm-hmm. Because again, if something is philosophically contradictory, then theologically, if you hold to it, it has to go out the window. I know this might make certain people uncomfortable, specifically maybe systematic theologians, but quite often philosophy is a more foundational discipline than a lot of the disciplines we look at, because it has certain assumptions. We have certain philosophical assumptions that we borrow and bring into whatever the conversation may be, whether it's linguistics, whether it is theology, whatever it may be. So, for example, there's something called modal logic that goes into this conversation. And modal logic is insane. Some people don't like it. People like Peter Kreeft don't like modal logic because they're going to say, well, it helps in certain areas, but it doesn't necessarily help in like your average daily use of it and stuff like that. But when for example, we think about possible world conversations, and I think this was mentioned a little bit yesterday in the conversation. So if God is a necessary being in all possible worlds. Now that's not saying all possible worlds exist. That is saying any world that could have been, God would have to be a necessary being, right? And you can have a lot of wrong stuff. Suppose we said, well, could we picture a world in which Nick was, 5'1", and Mexican? Well, yeah. I mean, it seems like we can think about a world like that. Even though those qualifiers are not true about Nick in this world, we're still talking about the same Nick with different qualifiers in that possible world, or else we wouldn't be able to communicate and have a conversation about that. It's like when I say Nick, what the heck are we talking about anywhere? Unless it's grounded, right? And this is, I think, what Kripke's going after in regards to this, this ability to ground a term and then speak about that term so it makes sense. And maybe that's the best we can do, and it would be true when it comes to God. But we do need to qualify things, I think, or else it goes all over the place, and then people have a hard time with it and say things they might regret in the future is my sort of thing. So I picture Nick in 100%. Chicago cooking.
Yeah, not Chicago, but you could picture me cooking.
That's right.
But listen, man, I got to jump off, but look, Arthur, I appreciate the way you handle all of these subjects, especially, the hot button issues, that you're not quick to jump on it and just, get on the bandwagon and start talking when you don't know what you're talking about. So just keep doing what you're doing, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. I'll tell you this, the other day I had there was, this is not a kind of scare moment, but before you go, somebody I know had put up a video, and then somebody else I know who's a very, very respected philosopher and apologist had shared that video on his Facebook feed and said, this is the sort of nonsense that we see on the internet from these pop apologists. And I was like, oh, I don't want to be that guy, man. I know both of these guys. And he just went after him on the way he was articulating some arguments. And there's other really well-known philosophers and theologians in the comments saying, yeah, they're not really doing service. And I kind of look at that and I go, again, maybe we got to dial this back a little bit, because we might not be presenting things the best way we can, and we might actually be doing a disservice to the dialogue whether it's inter-Christian dialogue or whether it's dialogue with, other religions and all that stuff. So let's not be that guy.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very, very easy to just have knee-jerk reactions. And, a lot of times we base our reactions on what we think we should say or how we should feel, rather than take a breath, really think about it, and, work through the different possibilities and see where it takes you.
Yeah.
It's just too often we're leading with our heart and not our head.
Well said, bro. Well said. By the way, I watch your barbershop interview things. I love them, bro.
I appreciate it, man.
keep 'em
Yeah,
up.
that was all your idea.
It wasn't. I took it from someone else who didn't actually implement it, but I'm
Hey,
enjoying
man.
them, man.
Appreciate it. All right, brother.
See you, man.
God bless you.
You too. Okay, let's jump into. It's getting hot in my office right now. This is good, Connor. Perhaps being needlessly inflammatory is just a bad idea in general. I mean, not perhaps, for sure, it's a bad idea. The thing is that generally, the way that algorithms are set up, the way that computers don't process, generally speaking, unless they're programmed in certain ways to filter this out. But computers aren't necessarily processing whether you're being inflammatory or something like that. Again, unless they're like, well, you can't talk about this and talk about that or whatever like that, and shadow banning and all that. But somebody can make a video, something like all atheists are stupid, let's just say, and then if you get a lot of comments in there and you get a lot of shares and likes about it, regardless of whatever you're saying in there, the algorithm is going to push more people towards that. And by doing so, you kind of get your ego stroked to a certain extent. And then so you keep doing stuff like that. And some people are, some people are just genuinely in this, not for the betterment of society and not for the betterment of other people or for evangelism. I mean, I do this for apologetics and evangelism, or evangelism and apologetics. And they're in it for other reasons. I don't know, popularity, money, X, Y, and Z. And so you need to have really good character as you do these things. Amber, what's going on? I love your headphones. I think I've said that to you before. You're muted. I can't hear you.
Okay, I have
There you are.
multi-layers of muting here, so
Yeah, I know.
sometimes they get muted in the wrong, in the wrong
I know exactly
place.
what you're talking about.
It's like, wait, I hit unmute everything. Oh, there's a mute on my actual mic, and I forget about that one half the time. I wasn't going to jump in, but then you got into this unnecessary inflammatory thing, and that is one of these things that I really gets me. When I was getting started, I got a lot of feedback like, you need to have better clickbait thumbnails, you need to have better, argumentative or like inflammatory thumbnail titles and things like that. And I'm like, no, I just want to have nice conversations about the Old Testament. I don't want to create drama.
Yeah.
Like I don't, but it's sad to me that
there is a wisdom in it. There is a wisdom. So for me, I think I always ask myself the question of, is it truthful to the conversation I'm having?
Mm-hmm.
So for example, if I'm going to say something like, and I don't think I have a title like this, I hope not, maybe, something like Christian demolishes atheist. The question is, did the Christian or vice versa or whatever, however people. And so there is a wise way of doing this where it gets people's natural curiosity flowing to say, I'm going to click into this video with the thumbnail, with the title and all that stuff. If people are just plainly lying and we can't ever judge this, their internal motivation is something else. Now, I get the world will do these things, but particularly I have an issue with Christians doing this, because if their internal motivation is incorrect, then the Lord's going to judge that, and the Lord's going to hold us accountable to those kinds of motivations. And that's when I think there's a problem. This is why it's important for us to have friends and leaders and pastors and elders around us that can say, hey, man, you made that video, take it down. Or change the title. I think that is not Christ-like. for us to actually humble ourselves and say, you know what, I thought it was okay, but having this conversation with someone who knows and is wiser than me, that I trust, I'm gonna lean on their understanding on this.
Yeah, and I was also wondering about, I was thinking about this the other day, how much of what I'm doing is I wanted to spark curiosity, not hit a dopamine hit. Like
Yeah,
I don't want people to come because they're not listening for a dopamine hit. You're listening when you're curious. You're not listening when you're coming in hot with wanting your next shot of dopamine to argue.
yeah, yeah. And again, this has to do with it's so difficult to judge this because quite a bit of it is just people's personal motivations. And you're going to have a spectrum of people on this. Some people are going to ignorantly do it. Some people are going to intentionally do it. Some people are going to do it for personal gain and stuff like that. And I'm going to go back to something like when Paul talks about some people preach the gospel out of selfish motives and for gain, and say, well, couldn't we stop that? No, not necessarily. Maybe we can bring light to it and maybe we can expose it. But at the end of the day, they will stand before the Lord. And I'm not necessarily concerned about that. But what I am concerned about is me and my motivation and what I'm seeking. And again, be wise. Oh, there's a viral content going on, or something's viral and we can lean into it and have a conversation about it. Sure, if you actually have something good to say about it that's going to be beneficial to the conversation. And maybe a question we should ask ourselves is, am I going to bring clarity to this conversation, or I'm going to bring confusion to this conversation?
Mm-hmm.
So because I've been in the local church context so much and working with people, I already realize there's so many people confused out there. My natural inclination as a teacher is I always want to bring clarity. I don't want to bring confusion to the situation. So that's just my mode of operation. And if I realize I'm going to bring confusion, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to talk about it. Some people aren't familiar with that. They're not aware of that. That, oh man, I'm bringing more confusion into this. And then they go ahead and do it. Not trying to destroy people actually having conversations about this stuff. It's fine for two people to sit down and say, hey, I don't know anything about the subject. Let's talk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's a cool environment to learn. I think when it becomes problematic is taking hard stances, you could say. And I don't know, I'm right now trying to draw some kind of a parallel into your expertise.
Well, I had a Hebrew, my Hebrew professor, the first Hebrew professor I had, he just passed away. They had his memorial last week or so. I had to watch it from home. I was sick that day. It was really sad to miss that. But one of the things that I love the most about Dr. Kutz, and he was always so generous to make space for somebody else. Like, what can I learn from you? What do you know to bring to me, to the knowledge that I already have? Like, what can you contribute to what I know? And just learning under him and that. So I really have tried to, especially lately, thinking about his legacy and everything I've learned from him. And he managed to put into the publisher 4 books right before he passed. So he's got 4 new books that are going to be coming out, text and canon, and a commentary on Isaiah. It's going to be amazing stuff. This guy was amazing. He taught himself Hebrew as a teenager because he loved the book of Isaiah and wanted to read it for himself. So, I mean, this man was, he was one of the guys who did some work on the Dead Sea Scrolls when they started discovering those. He was amazing. So being able to,
I know a teenager like that right now. I know a 14, 15-year-old right now who's learning Koine Greek. He's self-teaching himself Koine Greek. And I'm just, I look at him and when I introduce people, I go, we're probably going to be reading his books one day because he just seems like that kind of an individual.
Right. But if somebody like that can make space for me to learn from me as a brand new first semester student, like that taught me a lot about, and I try to bring that on my channel. Like, come and tell me what you know. I want to learn from you, and let's go curious down these rabbit trails, because there's so much room to explore, instead of taking the approach of like more of the adversarial type.
Yeah.
That works for some people, doesn't work for me. That's not my personality. That's not my thing.
Yeah, and I guess it's important to realize also what we're good at and what we're not good at. The personality sort of conversation really, really matters, because there's things that I'll say or I won't say, and I'll share with friends, and I go, yeah, they're like, why didn't you make a video about that? I go, well, because so and so and so and so and so and so have made a video about it. Just don't think I should. They go, well, but the way you deliver it is different. And I think people would be attracted to the way you deliver that information, even though it's the same information. And that's one of the things I guess we can grow in and learn, that it's not just about the information we're communicating, but it's also about the way we're communicating information, and then just how people connect with us individually as persons. So I'm a bit more open, I guess, to do that, to essentially step out there and say, yes, so-and-so did make a video about this. I'll make one as well. Yeah, it's interesting because I've been, so I got this thing that I'm doing on Patreon, and I'm hoping it's going to continue, because I tried to do it yesterday and we didn't have anyone show up. I changed the time a couple of times. It's a Bible study through the book of Ecclesiastes. And it's not necessarily like an in-depth, crazy like Bible study through Ecclesiastes. Got the book sitting there. I think that's a Longman book, if I'm not mistaken. And I've been using the ESV, and then I'm becoming more and more dissatisfied with the way the ESV translates Ecclesiastes. And I like the ESV. No, nothing against Ecclesiastes, but you know why.
Yeah.
And I have a friend who's doing OT at Wheaton right now. She's actually over there right now. And I think you met her at ETS, if I'm not mistaken. I was talking to her, and I was like, oh, man, she was translating some stuff out of Ecclesiastes. She's over at my house, and I walked in, and I was like, I'm doing this Bible study, and I was like, I don't like the ESV. And then I brought up the passage that I thought they were translating from their own preconceived notions about the book of Ecclesiastes. And I was like, I think it's a lot more negative than that. They're putting a positive spin on it and stuff. She was like, well, that's a really complicated subject. That's a complicated passage. There's so much complexities into it. And like, that's where my knowledge of the subject stopped, because I don't know the linguistic whatever's going on in there and how those things. So I was just leaning on her knowledge of it and saying, okay, like, what's actually going on in here? Because I'm reading translations that are like pretty negative about the king, and I'm reading translations that are like more positive about the king, and I'm reading commentaries, and they're like, no, those negative guys are wrong, and no, those positive guys are wrong. So, because that changes the way I actually read the text, and it is in those moments you kind of, if you're teaching, and you don't know all the details of it, it's important just to say, guys, here's what we have in front of us. Here's at least the discussion. You got to think through this a bit more, and then leave it there, and that's okay. You don't have to solve it.
And I think this is where some of the study tools that are amazing, that are great, that we have access to, fall down a little bit, because, Arthur, you're multilingual, and the way that you would read a menu and the words on a vocabulary list are very different than the actual way that they are used, and the way that a language. So I would imagine, I don't speak it, so I would imagine Armenian thinks very differently than English. Like Hebrew thinks very, very differently than English. So to understand the way that they're used, you have to learn to think that way. And that's very difficult to do.
It's so funny because we're talking about the negativity in the book of Ecclesiastes, and of like the reality of life. So in my view, Ecclesiastes is the most real book in the Bible, if that makes sense. Like real in the sense of raw about life without trying to solve anything, of saying, you're born, and there's a rap song I'm remembering now. It says, you're born, you suffer, you die. And to just stop it there, to just say, yeah, and life sucks sometimes. Or, hey, I can get rich. I did all these things, and I got rich, and I planted vineyards, and I created parks, and then I'm going to die and it's going to be left to someone who doesn't know what to do with it. So be it. That's life. And I think there is an aspect that a lot of people don't think in this Eastern or Middle Eastern way of, that we don't have to solve every question. We don't have to have an answer to every question, and we're okay with just saying that's the reality. Maybe there's this aspect of the naive optimism of being an American, and I realize that quite a bit because I'm like that as well. Because I got to take a pause, like when I'm talking to my dad, and he'll say things, and I'm trying to solve it, and I go, "Wait, hang on, dude, like he's thinking differently. He's got a completely different framework here of trying to recover and bring together this solution, I guess, to this problem, and say, no, there's no need for that. Just leave it for where it's at, because that's the way people would have seen the world. In the ancient world, definitely, I think in the biblical context, but also it's the way a lot of people see the world today.
Ecclesiastes is much more comfortable sitting in messiness without a resolution, but they always keep their eye on the chiastic structure of Ecclesiastes points us to hope, the hope of new mercy. So I sit in this messiness, realizing there's no answer now, but one's coming. And
but that's what I'm saying. Like it's unnecessary to solve all the smaller sections of Ecclesiastes, because at the end it does it to a certain extent. Like, like all these things. And here's what I've realized: fear God. Like that is it, and that fits well into the wisdom literature tradition. That fits well into the Torah. Like it fits well into just the overall scheme of the Old Testament to say, look, as crazy as life is, here's what we can't forget: to fear God. And so somebody told me this a while ago, where they said Psalm 1 is overly optimistic, right? Psalm 1 starts off with, blessed is the man who's, transplanted by streams of water, and he's going to be like this and all this stuff. And then he told me, and then you read the rest of the Psalms, and it's essentially an argument against Psalm 1, where he's just like, I'm not seeing Psalm 1 being done. What the heck is going on? Here I am. I'm trying to be righteous. I'm trying to be godly, but I'm seeing the wicked prosper and all these things. And I've kind of, in my mind, enlarged that to say, the book of Proverbs has a number of promises in there that, and so does the book of Psalms, but the book of Psalms is a lot more complicated than that, where you're seeing both aspects. And then you get a story of Job in the wisdom literatures, where there is a righteous guy whose life turns into a mess. And then we get this, view into the spiritual components of life. And then we get Ecclesiastes, that's a complaint essentially about all of these things. And looking at them as a unit, I've probably in recent years tried to look at the wisdom literature as a unit of literature, rather than separated, to make sense of the complexities of how to live life in a world that has many, many issues with it. And I think this is so timely. This stuff is so timely to us,
I love that, because you start off with a bang, and Hebrew loves to do this. We start off with the bang of, here's the idea of thinking back to Eden, and the rest of wisdom literature is grieving and trying to process through all of that mess of where we're at right now. It's amazing how it does that, like coping with, we're not at the ideal, how do we get back there? It's beautiful stuff.
Yeah, and it does all the stuff it's supposed to do in regards to the giant biblical narrative. It absolutely does.
Yep.
JP, what's up, brother?
Hey, blessings, brother. So I heard some of your conversation.
Okay.
And I just wanted to clarify, because I said this before, and we talked privately about this, and I agree with everything you're saying. I agree. Like, I cannot say that you are wrong, Arthur. You're not. My main issue, though, I'm willing to grant all of those things. Allah is bad, and the Catholics are not saying that Allah is good, because that is true. That is a straw man, right? To say that, Catholics are saying that the Quran and Islam is good, that is a straw man. But the point of contention isn't the thought process of these individuals philosophically. It's what the Pope said time in and time in and again, and what the writings say, where it doesn't leave space for there to be similarities. So it says same. If you look up the word same means identical, even philosophically. Because I looked this up. I was like, you know what? I'm not much of a philosopher. Maybe same means different in a sense in philosophy. So what I did was is that I looked up the word same and what does the word same mean in philosophy? And unless there's a qualifier,
Hmm.
which says if the Pope would have said something like, we all believe in, and basically, if the Pope would have said what you said, if the Pope would have said what everybody else is saying, very beautiful. But what the Pope said, what Lumen Gentium says, what it specifically says is that it is the same God. Now, anything after that, right, is where I'm saying if you're going to say that there are qualifiers to the statement, when the Pope never made such qualifiers, right? He's actually said things like all paths lead to God and all these things. That's where I would say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the work that's where I would say. But you're correct. I agree with what you're saying. But it's just that those qualifiers are not there. Yes, we get it. Catholics believe Allah is bad or all these things, and I get it. So I
Yeah.
can't see myself.
Again, my argument's not. My argument here wasn't with you, by the way. Me and you are
Mhm.
talking offline. So
No,
for
I was
anybody,
trying
yeah.
to clarify because I don't want no
No, no,
smoke.
no,
You
no, no,
feel me?
no, no, no.
I don't want no
No,
smoke.
you know the thing is that, man, like as I started thinking about this yesterday, and then I actually watched the entire conversation that Cameron had on his channel. I'm curious to see how the other conversation is going to go, and I hope it goes well, and there's clarification brought in.
With
I
Jay
didn't
Dyer?
know. I didn't know he had Trent Doherty on. Again, Trent's a respected philosopher. He knows his stuff very well. As a matter of fact, I actually pulled out an argument. Not argument. I pulled out an article that I had read years ago between Trent Doherty and a guy named Brandon Rickenbaugh, who had written this thing about humility, epistemic humility, and natural theology against another philosopher who was saying when you make theological assertions, you're not being humble and stuff like that. And so it's a really good argument. So I kind of went through that, and then some of the books that I just showed, and I texted you that I was, leaning into and seeing what's going on. JP, why are you calling again? Sorry, you're muted. You muted yourself.
Add me on my computer.
Okay, call again. So there we are. Yeah, so I wanted to look into that and actually listen to the conversation. I do think and I do agree with you. I made this comment yesterday that it doesn't bug me. It doesn't bother me. Just to disagree and say they were wrong. It might be more of an issue for Catholics because they have to
And there you
agree.
go.
At the very least, they
And
got to
that's-
agree with Vatican II, unless they deny Vatican II. There's Catholics that deny Vatican II. They think it's liberalized things and so on and so forth. Go ahead. Say that again.
Set up a,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
their name. Set up a contest.
correct. And then there's definitely more wiggle room for them to just say, well, the Pope made these statements, the Pope's wrong. Where I think more established doctrinal stuff like Vatican II will become an issue. And I'm now that I have, I guess, as I'm thinking through and I understand the philosophical discourse behind it, and I'm okay to that, then it makes a lot more sense. And this is where the teaching aspect comes in and the learning aspect comes in. It's like, okay, we get what they're saying and we get the philosophy behind it and stuff, but is that what they're actually saying in conversation? This is what I said to Nick earlier when I was having a conversation with him. I said, I will still stand by a statement that they don't worship the same God because in common language, worship implies, in my mind at least, it implies a certain kind of correctness. Like you're in good relation to. And there needs to be a qualifier there, in my opinion.
No, and I agreed with you. That's why I'm saying I
I know.
agree with everything you're saying. And the reason I agree, but the problem is that Catholics make beautiful philosophical arguments. Now I was talking now here's the issue with the philosophical arguments is that the Pope didn't make those arguments, right? Now you could say that there's leeway with the Vatican I Catholics that deny Vatican II, and they're actually growing. And I actually like those Catholics very well. Those are called sedevacantes. I've met a few that they say that the Pope seat is actually vacant. But these liberties that these guys take, it's almost like they go, okay, give me a pass and assume that the Pope meant it this way when the Pope actually never said it that way.
Yeah,
So
and I guess the question that we have to ask Catholics is, and for clarification on, is something like, do you think the Pope can be wrong in statements he makes?
no, yeah,
Like when he's
yeah,
traveling and stuff like that. And,
yeah,
you know, whether that's like all roads lead to God or,
yeah, yeah,
you know, I mean, Francis had a mess of these things. Francis was more of a mess on these things. John Paul was a serious thinker, written a number of like very serious documents, and so was Benedict. Benedict was a very serious thinker too. I think out of the last four popes, Francis has been weakest when it comes to his intellectual kind of abilities. Even the current pope, the guy's an expert in canon law, seems like a really, really bright individual. And so it could be, you know, the argument is something like, yeah, well,
they made
the
a
pope was
mistake.
wrong. He was
Yeah,
just wrong.
and I agree that they could say that. The problem is that there were a couple of popes that said it, and so it's like, well, dang, everybody's wrong, you know, and that's kind of the main issue there. But I agree with the philosophical arguments, but I would say this: I sent you a meme earlier. We're not going to say any names of a particular Catholic apologist that essentially said that if you think Barney's the Most High God, and you believe that Barney it came from the Judeo-Abrahamic faith, that you can say that is the supreme God, and that actually really be the supreme God. And so it's like some guys just are taking
Yeah,
it.
you know, again, this is where I think the philosophy of it
Mhm.
would be extremely important. For example, I wouldn't have responded like that. I would have said something like, Barney is already a set designator to a certain being, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, Barney. I'm sorry, it's just so silly, bro.
Yeah, I know, but that's the thing, right? Like when I say Barney, what am I thinking? Like there is a thing I have in my mind, purple
the cartoon.
dinosaur, so on and so forth. And so if somebody asked me that question, I would have said, no, you can't really use that because that's already a term that's established. Again, the way Kripke says it in his book, he calls it rigid designators. And again, I got to go back and look into the details of this because I'm not as sharp as I should be on it. And say, well, that's a bit unfair, instead of conceding the point, because when you concede the point on something like that, it makes it look really, really silly. There's actually a really good video on this. Let me pull it up. We'll watch this together. I got about 10 more minutes to do this.
Oh yeah, very good. So when I'll leave in 10 minutes myself because I got to get back to studies. I'm in school again. Your boy's been getting it in. Oh, I already told you this, but it's not going to be it's not a theological school.
Yeah, I got to ask you. I'll ask you off camera what you're studying.
Yeah, it's definitely not theological school. Those are boring.
That's a subjective opinion, man. I've enjoyed theological schools quite a bit.
See, I won't debate you on that one. But I'll say this. And go ahead.
So check out this conversation. It's very interesting. This is Dr. William Lane Craig in a debate. Now, this is the comment section. I'll drop the link in the. So it says a classic clip of Dr. Craig refuting biologist Dr. Lewis Walpert and providing some simple teaching on Kalam 101. Now, this is put out by Dr. Craig videos. And this has been shared so much on the internet, but it helps in this conversation. Okay.
There was one clip that I wanted to share just from one debate that you had with a British biologist whose name was Dr. Lewis Walpert. And this is Dr. Walpert's response to what what is commonly known as the Kalam cosmological argument, which is an argument that I'll ask you to explain in just a moment. But this is an argument for the idea that the universe must have had a beginning and therefore a beginner. And Dr. Wolpert argued in response that, well, that beginner doesn't need to be God. And this is what happened next.
I was simply saying that this is not a mere matter of speculation, that there's more than a tiny bit of evidence on the table.
But is he saying
Evidence for what?
Evidence for a beginning of the universe.
Yes, we know that. Nobody is
All right, well, that's what I'm offering in this first argument, is the evidence.
Because there's a beginning doesn't imply a God.
It does if the first premise is true, that whatever begins to exist has a cause. It logically follows.
Yeah, but, but the cause hasn't got to be God.
Well, remember I gave an argument for thinking that this cause is timeless, spaceless, immaterial, enormously powerful, and personal.
I think it's a computer.
Well, that wouldn't. Computers are designed by people.
No, this is a self-designing computer.
timeless?
Timeless.
Well, that's a contradiction in terms.
Why is it time? What's contradictory about it?
A computer has to function. It takes.
Oh no, this is a special computer.
Yeah, but it has to be logically coherent.
Oh, it's logically coherent.
Yes, you have to be logically coherent.
Oh no, this computer
besides,
is amazing.
No, besides, it would have to be, as I said, a personal being.
No.
And a computer is a physical.
Not this computer.
Object.
Oh
well, then,
no.
Okay, see, what you're doing is what you're calling a computer is really God, a non-physical,
So
It's just another word if you rob it of all the attributes that make it a computer.
So
Yeah.
so that's the there we are. So that's the point, right? Like, so here's using the word computer, and then he's robbing every meaning of what a computer is, and then he's giving it all the qualities of God. And then you go, okay, so why are you saying computer? Like, you're just being silly in this argument. Just say it's God. So because computers have a certain definition to them, and they're established. So when I say computer, we're all thinking about the same sort of thing.
And that's why I think what you said yesterday was very wise and beautiful. If you're gonna have a conversation with a Muslim, it is a good place to start that there is a creator, right? And we agree that there's a creator. But when we get to the crux of it, is it the same creator? And that is where the qualifier must be had. We can agree there's a general creator, and they're going to say that their creator is Allah, and I'm going to say my creator is Jesus.
Yeah.
Now, once we both agree on that premise, I cannot say that Jesus is Allah and Allah is Jesus, because they're not the same.
Yeah.
Now,
So again, there's a linguistic aspect to it I think that you should probably be careful on, because Allah just means God.
the Quranic God.
Yeah, we got to be a bit careful, because if if you get Arabic Christians who are like, Jesus is Allah.
Let me rephrase that, because you made that clear yesterday as well. Dios and all these things. So let me clarify that. If I'm speaking to a Quranic Muslim, right? He's a Muslim that believes in the Quranic Allah, not the Jesus Allah, because obviously there are Christians that are Arabic that say Allah, and then, so let me be very, very clear. Suppose there's a Muslim that believes in the Quranic Allah, right? The Quranic Allah. And they say, we both believe there is a creator. You believe in a creator, I believe in a creator. I would agree. Yes, we both believe in a creator. But if he tells me that the creator is the Quranic Allah, when I tell him I believe in the Jesus of the Bible is the creator, that's where I would tell that Muslim that the Quranic Allah, who you claim is a creator, is not the same God as the God that I believe in, which is Jesus of the Bible.
Yeah.
Those are two different
Another
things.
way, I think another way you can frame it is, hey, all these qualities you're giving to this creator God based on the Quran, maybe not all of them are wrong. Like, for example, if you say God is a creator, then I'm going to agree with you. But very important ones you're wrong about. And so therefore you're coming out on the other side with an incorrect understanding of who the one true God is. And I think this is, again, something that Trent touched upon and spoke about a bit. And I don't know whether William did as much in that conversation, but Trent Doherty definitely did, where he constantly said, well, yeah, they're wrong. They're just like very, very wrong about who this God is. But the designator still stands that they're still talking about God. And I think that, like, depending on how the conversation is going, there's different ways. And some of this turns into like a semantic
I agree.
conversation.
Like, like for example, Arthur, if we're just talking in general about God and there's never a qualifier made, like if me and a Muslim are going, God exists, and then we start giving the cosmological argument, and we could actually debate an atheist.
Well, yeah,
on
the Kalam cosmological argument was developed by Muslims. So
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So we could actually hold hands and debate an atheist. But at the end of that, right, at the end of that, when I go to sleep at night, I do have to come to grips with the fact that it is not the same God. Now, there could be similarities,
Yeah.
and there could be a lot of similarities. It could be 98% similar. But if it's 98% similar and not 100% similar, then it's
that's not the same.
the same.
No, I think that's a fair point. And again, I think this is partly, as I was thinking about this and reading and kind of trying to listen very, very carefully about it, I think there are points in this conversation people are having where they're talking past each other.
No, of course.
And so, and then it bugs me that we start debating around it when we're actually talking past. And I feel like we got to hit the pause button and be like, hey, let's not talk past each other, because I would agree with you in regards to the context you're saying this in. And I think you would agree with me in the context I'm trying to say it in. Mm-hmm. I think people will generally just be in agreement over
qualifiers,
that.
to be fair, you actually added You added qualifier. I'm pointing this way. It's like, what? No, you actually added qualifiers. But, bro, you know what would be a conversation I'd like you to have on this topic? Cleave to antiquity. I think you guys would really hit it off.
I'm not connected with him. I know he's been on Ruslan. I've watched a couple of videos from him. I watched a video you sent me from him.
I'll pull some strings.
Okay. Yeah. I don't mind. And he's probably he's more knowledgeable than me on this subject when it comes to kind of church history and the.
But you can obviously challenge him and ask him the right questions. So as soon as we get off this live, I'm gonna reach out to him.
Yeah, I'm down to have the conversation. I think again, if it's gonna bring about clarity, it's gonna aim at bringing about clarity, and it's gonna be beneficial to Christians, then I'm always down to do that. If it's gonna make a mess of things, then I'm not. And I like him. I like him quite a bit. I watched his entire interview with Ruslan. I texted Ruslan. I was like, dude, I love this guy. And then I've watched a couple of things. I've subscribed to his channel. I'd recommend people go subscribe to his channel as well. I think he brings in really, really good stuff. So,
I'll definitely pull some strings and I'll reach out to. I think it'll be great for your channel. Great conversation, and you would ask the right questions, because it is true. There's a lot of people. That's why I have to be, even when I say Allah, I have to be very careful, because Allah is, it would almost be like me saying, oh, Dios is a false God. It's like, well, wait a minute.
God is a false God.
It wouldn't work. So I have to.
Yeah. One of the ways we can speak about this, I think that'll be helpful, is saying things like, hey, when we say God exists, that's a general category that is true and we agree on. But when we're saying God in a more specific sense, we don't mean the same thing. Because of all the properties and qualifiers we give God. Like, practically, we don't mean the same thing, right? This goes back to, like, there was a silly argument atheists were coming up a while ago. I mean, they might still be, I don't know, in regards to the flying spaghetti monster. This flying spaghetti monster kind of argument.
An atheist actually asked me that today. He said, wait a minute. If said person said that Barney is the Most High, the same God that he serves, then can I say the flying spaghetti monster is the same God that he serves? If Barney is the same God he serves, and Allah of the Muslims is the same God he serves? So an atheist actually reached out to me and asked me that question. Real funny.
We're reading minds here, man. Hey, thanks, man. Thanks for jumping in here. And
I'm gonna reach out to that brother right away. Send me an email of yours so I can try to link you guys up.
I will, definitely.
All right. God bless.
Thanks, JB. Okay, folks. Hope this has been helpful. I'll cut out some of these sections and then throw it out there. Hopefully, it'll be a blessing to people. With all that said, God bless you guys. And I will see you guys tomorrow, because tomorrow's Thursday. Trying to stream every day today so that, we're making up for not streaming last week. So I'm doing my best to get some streams out and some videos out. So take care. God bless you guys. Whether you believe or don't believe, God bless you nonetheless. Keep thinking, keep growing, keep being humble and seeking after humility, and specifically seeking after Jesus above all things. Take care, and God bless you guys.